Hey, what's going on, Canyon Freaks? Welcome back to another episode. It's Jared, Northwash Outfitters, Northwash Outdoors. Hey, we've got a viewer question that we're going to answer today about girth hitches. So come along and let's go check this out. So, I got a question off my last video. For those of you that have seen the Mary Piglet video, in the extended director's cut version, I had a viewer that watched that and had a question during that video. We talked about some girth hitches around some of the anchors.
All the tension's on that. So, they had the right idea, they just didn't position it correctly. So I think we can just...
I think I roll that knot down lower.
Yeah.
A little bit better angle on that knot.
Yeah.
So that the webbing's not biting onto itself.
There. Now I'm happy with it.
And we talked about moving them and switching them to different angles for those girth hitches. The viewer asked if we could talk a little bit more about that. So here we are. We're gonna do a little bit with some webbing and some girth hitches and show you kind of a little bit more about what we think about girth hitches in canyoneering and how we view them and look at them and use them. So to do this, we're going to take an exit outside and go out to my tree and rig up some girth hitches. Let's go. All right. So there's different ways that we tie girth hitches around objects. Generally, it's going to be either around a rock for a dead man or a carron anchor. And then the other time is usually going to be around a tree or an object. So we're going to use the tree limb here and just kind of pretend that's both and kind of talk about them. So one of the more common ones, would be just a straight single line girth hitch. And to do that, we usually put an overhand knot on one end, with enough space to get a piece of webbing through there. Okay, come this way so you can come check this out now. Not on me, you're gonna watch the webbing. Okay, so when we wrap this girth hitch around an object, we'll get that loop around and then put our piece of webbing through there. Okay, and that's going to hold itself onto the tree or the rock. Now, what most people generally use a girth hitch for is a cinch knot. And they'll take the webbing and place it in such a way that you're going to be biting down. If I'm pulling downhill on this, I'm cinching down on that and just really putting a lot of pressure on that webbing. And that's kind of what most people consider using a girth hitch for, is to get a good cinch on there. But generally, that's really bad on the tree. You're going to have problems with the tree bark and the tree, pulling the tree apart eventually if you do this over and over in that one same spot. The other problem is on the webbing here. As you're pulling tight on this, you're really putting a lot of pressure into this bend here on the fibers there and on the fibers in the back of this string. So in the video, what we talk about is rolling the knot a little bit. And if you pull it around to the direction of the pull, now if I'm pulling down like that, or if we go back here and we're pulling this way still, we can move that back to where we want it. Now as I'm pulling on that, it's still holding against that tree or the rock, that object, but you're reducing the amount of tension on that knot. You're not pulling those fibers apart on that bend that way. And you're still getting a pretty decent cinch, a pretty decent girth around that object, that you're not going to move it too bad. Okay, so that's what I was talking about in the video, is just rolling that knot around and making sure that knot is not bending against itself and putting so much pressure on it like it does back in here. I mean, it's really great for cinching down, but generally with canyons, if I'm rappelling out this way, that knot's going to hold itself in place. So that's a single line girth hitch system that we see a lot in canyons, and those were the one types that were in that video of Mary Piglet. Okay, now I'm going to show you a couple of other uses of a girth hitch in a similar fashion. So if you were to take a full piece of webbing, and instead of doing a single line, let's tie our water knot and connect this piece of webbing into a loop. And the same thing can be done with a looped piece of webbing. Okay, you got your girth or your water knot, your loop. Now I'm going to keep that knot out of the way a little bit, and we're going to create our girth hitch out of a full loop of webbing. Same thing applies. Instead of coming back here and cinching down on that knot and creating a lot of pressure on that fold, on that bend, if I just slide that around, I can come in and pull that straight off without even causing any issue. You can do this the same thing on a rock or a tree. Okay, and all the same, if I was to rappel this direction, I could come back and pull it that way, same issue. I don't have to put as much pressure on that bend and create a lot of tension in there. And it's going to hold me just fine. Okay. Now, if I were to have a piece of webbing in a loop fashion like this, instead of really using a girth hitch, my favorite is just to throw that right around that object and run a basket hitch in there. Okay. Having that loop right around that tree or the rock, we do this all the time. You're actually using a lot more strength and a lot more durability in that webbing, because now I've got 4 strands of that webbing holding me instead of just 2 or the 1 in a single line case. Okay. If I wanted a master knot, I can still take this looped webbing, this basket hitch, and create my master knot in here. And that's going to equalize and put redundancy into that whole system there that way. That is probably the strongest, most bomb-proof way you can tie a piece of webbing for an anchor in a canyon around an object. It doesn't work so much on bolts, but if you're going around a tree or a rock, this is the most bomb-proof way you can make or tie a piece of webbing around that. So, hope that makes sense. Hope that helps. And I hope that answers your question off of YouTube. If anybody else has any other questions that they would like answered, hit me up. I'm always looking for material, and I'm looking for some ideas. So come along, hit that like and subscribe button, join us on our adventures, and we'll see you in the canyons.